Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. Do we have anybody in the audience who'd like to make some public comments? Seeing none. Can I get a motion for agenda review and adoption?
Move approval, Mr. Chair. Second.
I have a motion by Lynch and a second by Fahey for the agenda review and adoption. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. The approval of March 4th, 2025 minutes. I have a
Move to a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Fahey, a second by Uterman to approve the March 4th, 2025 minutes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Community announcements. Commissioner Anderson, start on the end.
All righty. So I had an opportunity to attend the Board of Adjustment Committee or board. That was an interesting process in my orientation, just trying to figure out how all these pieces work.
Commissioner, are you suffering insomnia?
I am a little bit. Commissioner Workman and I also got a wonderful tour of the environmental center and meet the people who are truly passionate about that work. I think we heard a testimonial from a client who said that she was able to paint her entire kitchen from the leftover paint from Workforce Center or from the Environmental Center. So that's just kind of a win, and it just shows the amount of services, wide variety of services that Carver County offers. Attended my first library board meeting and a first workforce board, Hennepin Carver workforce meeting. Commissioner Lynch offered my services and I had a chance to talk a little bit at the Lake Town Township, answer any questions. I appreciate that opportunity. Humility is always good for the soul. So thank you, Commissioner Lynch. I think that they missed you sorely. I do want to do a shout out in the Unsung Heroes section. We're getting ready to, spring is coming. People are thinking about their gardens. And so I spend a lot of time at the Home Depot Garden Center, and it's going to look very different this year because a wonderful employee there, Francie, is no longer there serving our community. And I think leaders come in all shapes and sizes, and this is a woman who truly has served our community in that role and was passionate about that, so she will truly be missed. I also spend a lot of time in my day job as I develop leadership training, and I came across this quote that I want to end with, and it says, "When we're no longer able to change a situation, we challenge to change ourselves," and that's from Viktor Frankl. And so I find that inspiring in these times of uncertainty. So
Thank you.
that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Uterman?
Good morning. I had a chance to meet with Dr. Horton this week. He's actually a constituent in Carver County, serves as the superintendent for Intermediate School District 288. We have partnership and programs with them, and it was a great conversation. He's been in the role about 8 months. He's done some overhaul and some strategic planning and hard conversations about what the future looks like. And we'll strengthen that partnership as it relates to Trades 360 and other things. Shout out to the Chaska girls. Made their way to state, lost the first game, but played back and ended up winning their final game. it was cool to see. I'll just share this story. We were in St. Paul at Parks meetings and talking to the dad of one of the kids that played against us, against Minnetonka, to get us to the state tournament. And he said, I just am in awe when I look at the Chaska side of the gym. He says, you've got people in your program starting in fourth grade all the way up. All the youth sports teams were there cheering on the Hawks at the away game. Our crowd was probably twice that of Minnetonka. And he says, and I look at our side, and I see people that got recruited to play from different cities. And he says the sense of community was when you grab somebody to play in the last 4 years of their high school career versus somebody that's come up with the program. And it just made me appreciate and understand how impactful sports and activities in our community and building that community are. I got a chance to speak with a couple of student groups recently, and I try to start some of those conversations by saying, do you know what a commissioner does? Most of them did not. Actually, all of them did not. And by the end of it, I said, does anybody, after we had a conversation, have any interest in doing this role in the future? And about half the group put their hand up. And I thought that was pretty cool. Get a chance to connect with the next generation, the pathway to what's in the future. And then I know we have some conversations today on topics, and everybody does this job for something different. I do it for my 5 and 9-year-old, and we were driving down the road on 212 just recently, and she's curious about all the building, and she sees the Public Works building. Of course, our destination was Bongard's Cheese to grab some cheese curds. And I said, Brooklyn, would you ever want to live in Carver County? She'd never given it thought. A 9-year-old shouldn't have to. And she said, I want to be a teacher, Dad. I think I want to be a teacher. And I said, do you know it'd be awful hard to live in Carver County if you had a teacher's salary? And so we had a really good conversation about that. And she says, Daddy, is that why you do it? And I said, yeah. I said, I want this to be a place for you and Tenley to be able to live in the future. And so those conversations are real when you look into the eyes of those folks. And I know a lot of the stuff that we do, sometimes it's maybe not guarded in that, but it was those days for sure. And then a lot of conversations. I also had a chance to attend a township meeting. A couple pieces of buzz that were in that. They raised their budget for the first time, I think, in 7 years in Dahlgren Township. And they raised it by 7%, and that was needed and necessary for some of the things that are coming. The secondary conversation with a lot of the folks that were in that room after the meeting was they're looking at, 600 to 1,000 new houses in the orderly annex station of city of Carver. And it makes folks in the rural communities a little bit trepidatious as to what's coming our way. That's a lot of houses, and these things are coming through orderly annex and other things. The conversation quickly shifted to some of the stuff that's coming out of Carver. Met Council gave projections that they're going to triple in size in the next 20 years. And if you look at just conservative estimates, there's not sewer capacity to support that. And so a lot of the conversation is where is that sewer capacity going to come? How is that going to come in the next 20, 25 years? And what opportunity do we have when we look at a 2050 comp plan? And so, as Commissioner Workman would say, it's the sexy stuff. Sewer is on my mind, and capacity as we grow is a pretty vibrant community. So thank you.
Commissioner Fahey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also went to 3 township meetings on the annual township meeting night, and it was interesting to the grassroots part of the government and the issues that they talked about and facing the various budget challenges for all the townships. And also, I continue to learn more about the fire contracts and the relationships that the townships have with all the local fire departments. And then there was discussions about the 2050 comp plan. And the last township meeting I was at was in Hancock Township, which they hold their meetings in a private residence. And we got some strawberry shortcake at 9 o'clock that night. So that was a bonus. So a thank you to Hancock Township and to Tammy. Also, the Minnesota Alliance of Local History Museums will be honoring 6 local history projects with the Minnesota History Award, and the Carver County Historical Society received one of those awards for their Carver County Veterans Searchable Registry project. It's a great example of a relatively small project that has had a big impact and something that could be easily replicated. I hope others will use this software to create their own veterans database. Set a History Awards Committee member, and just a thank you to Jeremy Murray for all his great work that he's done with this project. at the Historical Society. And the last one, Mr. Chair, the Department of Employment and Economic Development, they're otherwise known as DEED, is pleased to announce the recent award for redevelopment grant program. The City of Norwood Young America, with their project called Norwood Flats, received $238,500. The redevelopment grant program continues to be a very popular program that is often oversubscribed with funding requests. We are very proud of this program and the positive effects it has on communities. We are pleased to partner with our grantees to revitalize areas and provide opportunities for job creation and tax base increases that help our communities and state thrive. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lynch.
I've always talked about how I really love local sports, and like Chaska, the Mayor Lutheran girls basketball team made it to state, and they lost some very close games, but they also won some games too, and they lost in the consolation finals. I'd like to thank Commissioner Anderson, my good friend Commissioner Anderson, for covering me at Lake Township. I was on my way to my third township meeting, and I got a text that said, "We are no longer friends." So they beat her up a little bit at Lake Town. No, they didn't. She did a wonderful job. So thank you, Commissioner Anderson, for covering for me at Lake
They
Town.
missed you. They missed you.
I understand there was a peach cobbler.
Yes, there was. Yes, there was. But no, townships are very active. They're a wonderful form of government, and the people there actually are very knowledgeable, and they want some answers. And Commissioner Anderson did very, very well. I've had some feedback on it, so I just thank you sincerely for going there.
And we're still friends. Have to give you trouble.
And I made Watertown Township and Hollywood Township, and then I was on my way to Waconia Township. I pulled up, and every place was dark. I called up Scott Wakefield. He said we finished at 7:30, and this is at 5 to 8. So I made 2 out of the 3 I was going to. So anyway, thank you, Commissioner, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Week. I wore the coat yesterday and the tie and the whole getup. Had a little fun down at the state capitol. You're pretty much invisible the rest of the year. You wear that coat and everybody notice you. I'm gonna probably try to wear it every week. Remember that to go into history just a hair here, that it was not a famine in Ireland. It was a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
It was not a famine. They were exporting Guinness, which I might have had a couple of yesterday, and others. And I have a great book on the ports at the time that were busy exporting all sorts of grain and food and other. So it wasn't a famine. It was called genocide. So with that, I hope to get invited to a township meeting someday. I've never represented, as long as I've been involved in government and legislature, I never had went that deep into Carver County. But Commissioner Fahey, that story at a house with strawberry shortcake, we're still a good, fun county, aren't we? We're still, we don't have the issues, do we? So I know that I talked with Mr. Hemsey about maybe postponing the work session today on the environmental. I do have a funeral, Rose Razor, who's, I guess, sort of related to me. My sister, oldest sister Ann, is married to Tim Razor. So her mother-in-law, my sister's mother-in-law, passed away. She was 91 or 2 or 3, and could name all about 46 of her grandchildren by name and who they belong to till the final day. Her funeral is today at 11 o'clock, and so I'm hoping to get to that. The board can decide if they want to talk about the environmental stuff, but could probably easily be postponed. And then your day would be shorter too. So sewer capacity that Commissioner Fahey brought up, the Honorable Jewel Smith, who passed away some years ago and who was a Met Council rep and a very, very smart gentleman here. He worked with Jonathan Corporation. He was the county attorney of Chaska before that. he lived across the street from me when I was growing up. I got into trouble with his kids. Suggested that a new, I think Commissioner Ruderman, you were talking about capacity. You were the one that was talking about capacity. Did I say Fahey? That in fact, the long-range plan of the Met Council is to install a large sewer treatment plant somewhere west of here, attached to the Minnesota River, with a whole new link, kind of like adding a new 494, 694 out for that capacity. But they've long looked at possibly in Carver County a large line that would connect somehow and be a wastewater treatment plant somewhere down by the Minnesota River. So stay tuned for that if we're going to have growth, I guess. And then no townships. Okay, can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion by Uterman and a second by Lynch for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Item 3.1, professional service agreement with the Carver County Community Development Agency for distribution of local affordable housing aid. There's only 3 acronyms in that one sentence. I like it.
Good morning, Board Chair, Commissioners. Thank you for having us this morning. The purpose of our presentation today is really to talk in more detail around what the CDA intends to do with the local affordable housing aid allocation that we received. But I did want to do a level set. I believe most of you have seen these slides already. They have been in front of the board at a couple different presentations we have done regarding local affordable housing aid, which we kindly refer to as LAHA. But I wanted to do, just like I say, a recap. I know Commissioner Anderson in particular, a lot of this occurred over the last couple years and you were not on the board, so I wanted to make sure you were aware of kind of how this came about. So LAHA was really created by the 2023 legislature. The dollars come from a sales and use tax. What that really means is they vary a little bit and will vary a little bit every year depending on the spending that occurs in the metro, because it is based on sales tax. This is decided then by the Department of Revenue. They do kind of a preliminary number for us and then do a certified number based off of the previous year's taxes and what they'll impose. So we don't quite know. It does vary. We won't get an exact amount or the exact same amount every year. We're actually hoping it will go up because if people spend, hopefully then we'll have more tax. Again, this applies to our metro counties, the 7 metro here, Carver being one of them. Again, this is calculated off of cost burden household, where they're really utilizing the gross rent of residents who spend 30% or more on their household income. 2024 legislation, they did make some amendments to the 2023 statute, just giving a little bit broader definition and expansion of use for the LAHA funds. This was good for us. It did allow some support services and case management services to be funded. That was left out of some of the original legislation. And I'll have Jen Romero, our housing supervisor, come up in a minute to talk about briefly how HHS is using some of the funds, and that case management piece is really key and was a great expansion for us to be able to utilize some of the dollars here at the county to be able to administer some of the work that we do. Again, the goal of LAHA really is to develop and preserve affordable housing, really looking at those folks who may be in arrears, either with rent or possibly housing costs, household, even if they own a home, in arrears with those costs and expenses to maintain their housing. And again, as I shared, providing case management has really become a key part for the education and sustainability, and we were thrilled about that because I'm a believer that you can't just pay for housing, but you really need to be able to educate and help folks to be able to sustain their housing. The board did approve at their August 24th board meeting last year that 30% of the LAHA funds, again, that appropriation will change every year based off tax and spending. but 30% will go to Health and Human Services to utilize as we see appropriate. And then today, again, the main goal is really to talk about at least the plan on how the CDA will utilize the 70% that they will receive. Again, there's pretty clearly identified and in some ways a little prescriptive qualified projects definitions in statute. We have to conform with those requirements that are outlined in that law on how we utilize the dollars. I am this is just a brief, this is our certified 2024 amount. You can see we're just a shade over 1.6 million that Carver County received in LAHA funds last year. We do receive the funds in July and then December, so it's a two payment process. They give us half the money halfway through the year, and then we get the rest at the end. So our 2024 money, half of what we just got in December, so it's really rolling into 2025 for all kind of intents and purposes for spending. And again, the preliminary amount, what we're predicting for 2025 is pushing 2.4 million. That was based off of just some predictive modeling that the state did, based off of the spending that they've seen over the last year. So again, we won't have that information certified for us until probably June. They usually seems to come out late June with a certified amount, and then they cut checks in July. So hopefully that will stay consistent, and we'll be able to get those funds, and actually we'll have a bit of an increase then of dollars to spend. And so at this point, I will ask Jen to come up. The LAHA appropriation and spending in HHS is done through Jen Romero in our housing unit and in partnership with our income support unit. And so we are already distributing some of these funds out and are utilizing these funds to support the community. So with that, I'll ask Jen to come up and just share a bit about what she's doing in her area regarding the funds. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Heather. Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. So the rent assistance, $120,000, will be used to help people preserve the housing that they already have. So people who are behind for emergency reasons on their rent payments can submit an application to Carver County, which would be processed through the Income Support Department and either approved or denied based on the applicant's eligibility. Part of that money is being spent specifically by a variety of case managers throughout Carver County who have long-term relationships with clients that are very familiar with their client situation and know that the money will help keep them stabilized in their homes and prevent homelessness. We also, last October, released an RFP to solicit our housing support providers to see if any of them needed additional funding for support services. We ended up allocating $255,000 to 4 agencies. The CAP agency received $100,000 to provide support services to their housing support program and to provide front desk coverage to the West Creek apartment building in Chaska. Skyline Inc. is a housing support agency that is receiving $80,000 to add to their support services and also provide emergency rental assistance to the clients that they serve. Maverick Unified Services is our newest housing support contracted agency for Carver County. They're receiving $60,000, and they have begun a brand new program for us doing housing support administration to help people stay in their homes and help rehouse people who are experiencing homelessness. And then we have Volunteers of America, who will receive $15,000 to help provide support services to lease up Prairie Point in Shakopee for the Carver County folks that they will be working with. And then we will also be using approximately $80,000 of the funding to help provide support services to residents throughout Carver County through the housing support through the housing unit. So through my unit, basically help pay for the support service work that my team does when they're working with clients who are experiencing homelessness in the community to help rehouse and stabilize them. Any questions about that? Okay.
Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
Good job.
So with that, I'll invite up Allison or Melody. I'm not sure if both of you are tag team. Allison's going to take lead. So again, like I said, our goal really today is for the CDA to be able to share how they intend to use some of their funds. And I want to just thank Allison and Melody both for their collaboration and partnership. It's been a wonderful process for us working together to really develop these plans and develop the projects. And so I'm really excited about the uses. So with that, I'll turn it over to Allison to share a bit.
Morning, Allison.
Morning, Chair and Commissioners. Excited to talk about this new funding to get some new programs up and running for the residents of Carver County. So this first slide is just our proposal that we made to Heather to show where we're trying to allocate the money over the next 5 years. Obviously, this could be subject to change based on the needs in the community or, you know, other things that, other programs that might come up. But you can see the allocation, and then I'll go into detail on each of these programs on the next slides. So the first is our down payment assistance program. It'll provide an affordable pathway for low and moderate income households to achieve home ownership. The guidelines for the down payment assistance program were passed at the CDA's January board meeting. Households would be at or below 100% of area median income, and that is currently $124,200, and that would not be adjusted by household size. Again, program goals then encourage home ownership and maintain a strong residential real estate market for all household income and property types. This would be for first-time home buyers. The purchase price may not exceed $415,000, and that's approximately 85% of the area median sales price for a single-family home in Carver County, and that can be adjusted annually. Households would be eligible for up to $50,000, and the debt-to-income ratio cannot exceed 40%. And then all households would be required to complete a home stretch class in order to be eligible for this program. Then we would be looking to add a first-generation down payment assistance program. So this program would follow the first-time home buyer. We would just have funds set aside specifically for first-generation households. And the definition for first generation would be the prospective homeowner, either themselves and their parents would not have owned a home, or they would have lost it to foreclosure. And then all the rest of these programs we don't have guidelines for, so we, like I said, down payment assistance has been approved. We would be looking at then implementing guidelines for all the other programs. So the next one is a grant fund program for seniors, a rehab loan program. Again, specifically targets seniors. So it helps seniors that are not ready to move out of their house stay in their house longer, but be able to make repairs so that the house doesn't deteriorate. So it wouldn't be things like painting or cosmetic, but things that preserve the structure. So targeted improvements like roofs, HVAC, critical physical needs. This would be deferred and forgivable. With the right of first refusal to the CDA so that we could potentially put it either into our land trust program or work with somebody who's applying for down payment assistance or first gen where they could potentially buy it. And this would target households at or below 60% of area median income. And then the next one is a revolving loan fund. So the CDA, currently we administer a rehab loan program through Minnesota Housing. But this program is very challenging because it targets households at or below 30% of area median income. And it takes a long time to process this with MHFA. So we would this would allow a more broad use of funds for fix-up projects. It would target homeowners at or below 80% of area median income. And it would be a low-interest revolving loan fund. So it'll allow us to continue to make loans by having it be revolving and making a little bit of interest on it. And then the last one is multifamily new production. So this would be funding available as gap financing for other developers coming in who are trying to do affordable housing developments, private developers. It would target households at or below 80% of area median income. And for this particular program, we probably won't implement this until year 4 or 5. On that first spreadsheet because we're going to need time to set aside funding for there to be enough money in there for it to really make a difference for a developer who's seeking that gap financing. Any questions?
Any questions? I maybe have a couple. This seems like a pretty good windfall But we're not really building any new housing, correct? We're just sort of taking care of the people and the housing that we have, right? Would that be the general?
Correct, with the exception of this last one, the multifamily new production.
So that would be used just to bring down the cost of, can you give me an example of that?
So, like, for example, let's look at Carver Oaks that we have under construction with MHFA. The county, we got $1 million from the county for that project. So there's two areas in the funding with Minnesota Housing where we get points for bringing in our own money to the deal. So it will, if projects are going to MHFA, it can help them get points and help, potentially bring down the debt and in the gap and what they're applying for. Or as an example, I think of Lake Susan Apartments in Chanhassen. That was a senior deal that opened I think they actually opened right after COVID a couple of years ago. They did a TIF district, so they had no MHFA money in the deal, but they applied for our Community Growth Partnership Initiative, so potentially a private developer who's maybe wants to do a TIF or something else creative to bring in some affordable units, then they could apply for money for this. So it just depends on how they want to finance it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Commissioner Uter.
on that topic, this is the one that excites me the most. And you guys are good at putting up buildings and beating your head against the wall with all the things you have to do to assemble the funds, and it's more complicated than I can even comprehend. I think this is the best spend of that money, because everything else, you put it in once and you might get a return. This one, you can put it in for a long term. I've done some independent research on the potential of co-op. A co-op being where you own shares of it, and when you're done, you can have equity when you leave on. I've also done research that suggests that 15 to 20% of the build cost of anything is land. And so on the heels of what came out of the federal administration in the last 24 hours of them potentially opening up federal lands to make affordable housing possible, it not only recognizes that there's, I think they said 7 million missing middle houses that are needed. That's a big number, and I don't know what our share is based on those numbers, and a lot of that land isn't here. But I know the county sits on a lot of land, and maybe that trickles down to the county partnering and purchasing underlying land to take that 15 to 20% off the table, where we control that land. And then whatever you build on top, maybe a third of that housing is reserved for, I'm looking in the back, first-time sheriff's deputy that may want to come work for us, but can't because it's really expensive to live here. Had a chance to be in Mankato last week, and I met with the folks there, and they've used a model where when they're building up a big, nice, fancy fire station, they tested putting up 3 townhouses, and their rent, if you will, is in exchange for 20 shifts at the fire station. And it kind of solved their community challenge because they're having a hard time recruiting firemen. And I know we're having a lot of times, we're not alone in law enforcement. And what does that look like? And so I guess if I envisioned, close my eyes and envision a ladder, I think we've done really good in the first rung and the second rung and the third rung of those affordable folks. I think you guys were in the boardroom a couple weeks ago when we talked about effectively the youth and young adult homeless population has been solved through West Creek. So the 3 rungs that are missing on that proverbial ladder are what do you do after that? If you're able to, and not everybody is, some people will forever stay in where they're at, but if you're able to, what does that step-up housing look like? So long way around saying, and a lot of variables here, could we use this to explore what a co-op model might be where you not only develop and build more stock that CDA controls so other people can benefit from it, but you're also creating a path for ownership or partial ownership. When you leave, there's something to take and put it as a down payment on a house. We don't have stock between $200,000 and $400,000. I'm not worried about the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 plus. We're competing fine for those, but we're missing that middle because we haven't built it for 20 years. Is co-op a model that we could use these dollars for that we've explored?
Allison.
I don't have the answer to that, but I'm happy to explore it. I mean, I know there are funding opportunities specific to co-op type housing, so we're happy to do some digging on that and see what we can find.
When we were looking at ARPA dollars, and to use your word, you said windfall. We didn't expect that, and I was told, as a new commissioner, don't expect these monies to be coming because they're not. And I think the next 3 to 5 years looks bleak. The state is looking at $6 to $10 billion deficit in 27, 28. this is an opportunity that we could actually make a difference and make that stock. We did the same thing with ARPA. We invested in broadband, we invested in housing. We're going to see the benefit for those for 20 plus years to come. And so I think this is an opportunity. Thank you for your willingness. I'm happy to partner and share all that I know. Mankato might be a good one to take a look at. I know when Susan was in Waconia, they looked at it, and there's a lot of pieces of the equation. I get it. But if the fundamentals of could we partner to buy the underlying land, maybe even out by Public Works, who knows? If we can have a sense of ownership, I'm thinking for how can we develop more stock and how can we have a path for ownership for people to take that next step. And it's an area I think we're poised and we have the right team to tackle it like we've never done before. So thank you for your willingness.
I maybe have a quick question, maybe on behalf of the taxpayers. Maybe it's Ms. Romero. She mentioned Prairie Point in Shakopee. Can you explain to the Carver County taxpayer why you were talking about a place in Shakopee, another fine county?
Yes. So I'm going to use West Creek as an example. So West Creek used coordinated entry to find the youth to fill the vacant units. So the project was dedicated to homeless youth. They took youth technically from all over the suburban metro area. Most of them were from Carver County, but there were some from other areas. Prairie Point is located in Shakopee, but to fill their homeless dedicated units, they have to select clients from the coordinated entry list because they're funded through the state. And that list includes all the suburban metro counties as well as Carver County. So we anticipate and have anticipated for a very long time that the majority of the homeless units at Prairie Point will be filled by Scott and Carver County households. And so Volunteers of America is the agency that will be providing the services for that property for the homeless dedicated units. And so Volunteers of America will be working with Carver County residents referred off of coordinated entry into that project when it opens in December. So they'll start taking referrals probably around October if everything goes to plan in terms of the construction timeline. And then they'll house Carver County folks who are willing and want to live in Shakopee in that project.
Does that then mean that Carver County dollars follow that person, or?
Only for a little bit. Once they become residents of Scott County and they've lived in their new apartment for 30 days, then they become Scott County's priority. But there's this whole lease-up period where they're initially leasing up the homeless units, which is a significant period of time and a good chunk of the building, where there could be a significant number of Carver County folks given the opportunity to move there.
Thank you. Heather, anything else, or
And Commissioner Workman, I have a couple questions.
Commissioner Anderson?
All right. I want to kind of go back to that 30-70 split. How's that working? I mean, are both of you able to, well, just how's that working? Is that sufficient? Is the 30% sufficient for our needs are?
I think today it is. We base the 30% off of some evaluation that Jen and I had done around what we had historically spent on rent assistance, what we had done with housing support services through Health and Human Services. We've talked that percentage might need to change if the climate changes, if we see a different need in Carver County, we may need to come back to the board in future years and ask for a different percentage split. And again, we wanted to have enough dollars in there that the CDA could implement some of these qualified projects. Again, the definitions of those are pretty prescriptive in the statute, and CDA has done a nice job of putting together a package that follows those qualified projects, and it was important for HHS and for the community for the dollars to be there to be able to implement those programs. And so I think for today, it's working. Again, we're really not even a year in yet. We got our first allocation in July of 2024, second allocation in December of 2024. So we're really just getting started. So I think it'll be an interesting question and something to come back to in maybe the next year or two to say, okay, let's look back at this, a couple of years worth of utilization and determine if that's the correct percentage moving forward.
Thank you. And then my other comment is, I do love the path to home ownership. I think that's really the way to build people and to get them out of poverty. So I really appreciate that so much money is being spent on that. Do we have a sense of how many families have been served by this at this point? I'm not sure I saw that number, maybe I missed it.
No, because we haven't signed the contract.
Got
That's-
it.
That's to be approved
That's what I'm
here.
missing, all right.
But
Because
Melody
that's where we're at,
does
got it.
have some projections she could share.
I would
She,
love
based
that.
on the numbers and what our DPA amounts are gonna be.
Perfect, thank you.
What a great question. Hello, everyone. My name is Melody Bridgman. I'm the Director of Community Development for the CDA. I'm really excited about this resource. It's just something new that, again, we're able to implement a lot of the needs that are identified in the housing plan where we want to go with the county. We're anticipating, again, $50,000 for the down payment closing cost assistance, roughly 75 to 100 for first gen and land trust, 20,000 for seniors, 25 for revolving loan fund. Altogether, over the 5 years, we anticipate we'll be helping about 225 households in the county with this resource. Again, assuming a little bit of an increase in the resources every year with the sales tax.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, you know, too often when we talk about low-income housing, we're talking about rent. And really home ownership is really the way to kind of build people and get them out of poverty. So I appreciate that. I also have another question for Director Goodwin. You know, with this program and I love our partnership with CDA and Jen and what we're doing. I do know that, or is there a potential as we have more low-income housing? What pressure does that put on your department for case management services and whatnot?
Appreciate the question, Commissioner. It is something we pay very close attention to and watch, and the reality is for most of the units, as Jen has even explained, that many of them are homeless units or are meant to combat that, or even I'll use the example of Carver Place, that is one of the senior housing units that's being developed by the CDA. The reality is those are low-income, units. Those, as we've explained, there often needs to be a percentage of median income that's low enough to be able to qualify for those units. So the bulk of those units do result in additional caseload for staff, for my staff, whether that's our financial assistance, income support staff that would be processing those housing support applications, might be opening those persons to food support, other kinds of things. Could also be additional caseload in our home and community-based care area, which works with persons with disabilities or with the elderly, senior, older adults population. They often might be receiving elderly waiver services, for example, to help support being able to live in that residence and get the services they need to live in an independent apartment or home. So there is a high percentage of all of this build that does result in increased cases for Health and Human Services. And it is something that while we want the housing, and I think the housing is very needed and it's a very good thing, it does operationally result in more cases to manage. And when you start getting 50, 60, 70, 80, that's an FTE. Those are more, that is not something that can oftentimes be absorbed in our current staff complement. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I think that that's something that we have to understand as a board, that yes, we do need this housing. And Commissioner Uderman and I were just in a workforce planning meeting and talked about the importance of workforce housing and that piece. And we also have to start considering the pressure that's putting on our organization and the operational costs that may be incurred by that. So as we go forward, and of course, budget dollars will be tight. So so thank you for sharing that.
Yes,
And just thank you so much for the partnership of this beautiful group of people and serving our community. I appreciate the passion you have around this, and also just the competence and the talent we have in the room for this. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that. And unless there's more questions, I will move and ask for a motion to approve the LAHA professional service agreement between Carver County and the CDA. We're going to run that through December 31st, 2026 to give an opportunity to see, again, how these dollars play out, how, what we end up getting for, it'll be interesting too, because 2025 will really be our first year to see where, if we do continue to get incremental increases or if those dollars start plateauing and stay flat. It'll be interesting to see where they go, but we will run the contract through 2026 to give an opportunity for the CDA to begin to implement some of these programs. And the contract actually is currently, I think it may be right, it actually could be approved as of yesterday, but I think we have been running that through our internal contract process, so it could be technically pending. So with that, I'll ask for a motion and again, appreciate the opportunity. I mean, it's unusual to get an allocation like this from the state. I think it's exciting because unless the legislature takes action to end it, this is indefinite funding. Again, very unusual for us to get that opportunity. So I do think there are some wins here for the community that we can do and do some good work with this funding.
Why don't I get that motion and second on the table, and I know Commissioner Uterman has another question. So the motion is to approve the local affordable housing aid professional service agreement between Carver County and Carver County Community Development Agency, contract number 25-131 through December 31st, 2026, pending approval through the internal contract review process. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Anderson and a second by Fahey. Commissioner Uterman.
To Commissioner Anderson's point about the cost of services when you build, and, I've seen two big developments proposed in City of Carver alone, and their commercial industrial tax base is it's paltry. It's less than 1%, and it concerns me. I think one of the numbers that I've heard in the past is the first $500,000 worth of home value or dwelling value just barely covers county-related services. And I don't know where that number came from. But at one time it was 450 and then I heard 500. Is there a way we can get that average number? Because I think it's really helpful as we plan. When you build a house, it comes with a lot of services. When you build a warehouse, it comes with close to none, right? After you get the roads built. So if there's that number floating around for Carver County, I think it'd be really helpful to know. I know Chaska and Chanhassen has done a great job of their non-residential tax base, 15 to 22%, given wherever you're at. And it's deeply concerning to see the growth in areas that are highly being driven by residential only. And I think that's a great point of what the headwinds costs are. Not saying we shouldn't do it. We just need to be aware of it. And I'm really encouraged by year 5 of 2029 for multifamily, 26% of the dollars. If there's any way we can accelerate that, that would be my preference. I think close to 200 people you said would be impacted. You get to impact them maybe once. If you build a building, if you rotate people through every 3 or 4 years or whatever the number is, I don't know what the average is. You can get to that number in a decade, and then you've got multiple decades in the future where you can have permanent impact. So, thank you.
Well, and I think I've been asking questions like that for a long time, and I'm not sure it's this group that has the answer to that. Maybe it's Paul Moline, maybe it's Frischman. What is the right math? I know the city of St. Paul has so much nonprofit property, Catholic Church, et cetera, that they have a unique issue. City of Victoria has a unique issue. They got a lot of parkland, and so they're trying to come up with some industrial. But there's a algorithm of some sort out there about how best to do that. But I'm not sure you guys are. I think the question was in relationship to what the human service
Yes.
costs are
Yes.
of an individual home, and so but. I'll leave it up to you, but maybe you're going to need some help with that. But anyway, okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I do have a motion and a second for this. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Sir, thank you.
Okay, item 3.2, approval of revised bylaws for the Mental Health Local Advisory Council.
Very good, sir. I'll start us off again with this. As Commissioner, our new liaison, Commissioner Anderson knows, we've been working on updating the bylaws for the mental health Advisory Committee, also known as the Mental Health Local Advisory Council. So when you hear that term, they are exchanged kind of one and the same. To the board, it's called the Mental Health Advisory Committee, but we follow some of the statutory language around the naming, the operational naming of that committee. So I did want to introduce, I believe Melissa is here. She's one of my amazing staff, Melissa Hanson, who runs our case management area and oversees and is our county liaison to the Mental Health Local Advisory Council. So I wanted to bring her up and allow her to introduce herself and just set the stage a little bit regarding the council. And then Kayla is here as well, who is our newest chair of that council, to actually walk you through the changes of the bylaws.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Melissa Hanson, the Community Support Unit Supervisor. So I've been honored to be one of the staff liaisons for the Mental Health Advisory Committee, known by statute as the Mental Health Local Advisory Council, often called the LAC. I wanted to just introduce Kayla Pasco, who has been rather newly elected as the chair, but has been really active since she's been a member, really valuable in sharing her talent and skills, and Robert's Rules of Orders expert for our committee. So appreciate all that she's been able to add. So come on up, Kayla.
Well, good morning,
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Thank you so much for seeing us.
Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for seeing us today. Before you, we have a set of proposed amendments to the bylaws for the Mental Health Local Advisory Committee. The goal of these is to kind of update the language to make sure that we are in compliance with the statute as it's written. This is statute 246.666 subsection 5 of the Minnesota State statute. The major changes that are being made, one, we're lowering the number of members of the committee. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you're aware this is a difficult committee to fill. We'd like to have full seats for no other reason than it makes it a lot easier to calculate a quorum. In addition to that, the biggest change is that we are putting into the bylaws the actual statutory requirements for the qualifications of each of our members. So if you'll go ahead on the, I believe it's the second page of the document, you'll note that specifically, the statute states that the committee must include at least one consumer, one family member of an adult with a mental illness, one mental health professional, one community support services program representative, and those are things that were not included in our bylaws previously. Additional language has been recommended and has been placed as an amendment just to make sure we have clear language and consistent language throughout the bylaws, again, in compliance with the statute. Be happy to take any questions at this time.
Any questions?
It seems very clear. Kayla, as always, you're very clear.
Thank you.
On what's required, so thank you.
I am grandparent certified, if you need help with the child.
Yes, we came in at the very, very last second, cut it very close, but I'm glad to be here, so.
It's not a sound we hear in this room very often. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, little happy baby giggles.
What was the name?
His name is Arthur.
Oh, just heard that.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. A little bit of cleanup. You got rid of my old friend Sue Kunitz off that committee. She got timed out, right?
Correct.
And so maybe we need to change that. Good people have to leave these committees, and then we're looking for more. So, but Commissioner Lynch, aren't you? Who's the?
I have been for quite some time. Commissioner Anderson has taken this one over, and it's you mentioned cleanup. It's very good. Just to see from going from 14 to 13 to avoid the tie vote. But
Are there ties?
not usually, but it's a very difficult one, as Kayla has to staff, because there's different categories to go through, and but there have been there have been ties, but more likely it's just to get the quorum more than anything.
To go from 8 to 7 is kind of a big deal.
It is. For this committee in particular, we almost always have 7. We very rarely have 8. And part of that's because this is a weekday 4 PM meeting. And so it's a little bit harder to get people to come to it.
And there's a lot of liaisons. There's a lot of
Yes.
non-voting members on that, including this board seat. So that doesn't help. I mean,
Fills the room.
it fills the room, but it fills the room. That doesn't meet a quorum.
Yeah. So that's our recommendation. And you are correct, Commissioner Lynch. The reason why we chose to go to 13 instead of 15 was because of the quorum issues. The reason why we chose an odd number was in case of a tie.
Okay. Well, I have a motion by Anderson and a second by Lynch, I understand, to approve the
Yes, you
revised
do.
bylaws for the Carver County Mental Health Local Advisory Council.
Yes,
That suit you guys?
that
Any
does.
further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you,
very much.
Commissioners.
And thank you for your work on this.
I'd be more than happy to talk to Arthur, just so he doesn't talk down, just so he doesn't talk down to me.
Certified? 6 times certified. Not that I'm bragging. All right. Commissioner Lynch, do you have anything you want to say?
I'd like to recess as the county board and reconvene as the county ditch authority.
Commissioner Lynch has moved that we recess as the convene as the County Ditch Authority. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a second by Commissioner Anderson. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Mr. Frischman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David Frischman, Carver County Ditch Administrator, also Property and Finance Director. Good morning, board members as well. Today's motion is for the redetermination of benefits, which the County Ditch number 6 approved at a public hearing on February 18th. And I went through and added up all of the costs of the redetermination of benefits. And just making sure I got this right. So, and the buffer strip payments have already been made. So the total cost of the redetermination was $63,176. So I'm recommending a special assessment of $63,176 be assessed for County Ditch 6, and then for any individual assessment over $250 to spread that over 5 years with an interest rate of 4%.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion by Commissioner Fahey
I would second.
and a second by Commissioner Lynch to consider adoption of a recommended $63,176 special assessment with any individual assessment over $250 spread over 5 years with an interest rate of 4%. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, do we know this one and others, how much the max would be that a household would absorb? And do we know how many properties this 63,000 is spread over?
I do have the list. I have both those questions. I don't have it with me. But yeah, it's all based on the benefits that the viewers determined that the board approved. And so this assessment will go against that. And then any future assessments for ditch maintenance or repairs, I think will all be using that new list of benefited properties.
And the viewers did a good job because no landowner is in the room.
Yes, that's correct.
I also want to make the point to be clear that these payments could be spread over 5 years, but they don't have to be.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Anderson. We will be sending out a notice, a special assessment notice within the next 30 days. And that'll let all the ditch owners know what their assessment is and give them an opportunity to prepay that before the end of the year. And then there'll be they won't pay any interest on that. But any assessments that are not paid and at over 250, we'll put them on at that spread over 5 years at the 4% interest rate.
And this interest went up from 3% to 4%. Can you talk to that a little bit? Why the change?
That was, I guess, my historical thinking was 3%, but I checked in with our Assistant Finance Director, Mary Kay, also checked with McLeod County, and 4% is the,
Got it.
is the
So
rate that
it was
people are.
not a change.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was just, that was my preliminary recommendation of 3%, and then got a chance to talk to a few more people, and they said the going rate was closer to 4%.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Frischman, so what information do the property owners have? They don't know how much they're paying. I mean, do they have the math about what their percentage of this is?
They know the percentage. They
know
have
the
that
percentage?
available. Yeah, that's what the board approved, is their percentage. That information's been on our website, what their percentage is. There was a hypothetical $100,000 assessment that was included on our website, so they could see if, for 100,000, they could see what their percentage would be. Now for CD 6, it'll be that number we just approved. They'll be able to use the proportion. It's not the 100,000, but they have that available. And like I said, we will be sending out a letter that'll be addressed to each property owner at their address, and it'll have their specific amount that their assessment is for.
So I may know that I have 2.5% of this.
Yep.
And now I know the 63,
Yep,
and I can do simple math, and I
Yep.
know what I'm, okay.
$1,200.
I just was trying to figure out why nobody was here with less information. Is this done, are we done with this then?
We are now done with County Ditch 6. And as I said, we have a workshop coming up in April, where we're going to talk with our ditch attorney and Mike Wanis from who's our ditch inspector from the Conservation District. We're going to have a discussion with the board about setting a policy in terms of maintaining these ditches and what work needs to be done, and how, when do we want to inspect things, and how often do we want to keep doing repairs and maintenance. Coming out of that, there'll be any projects that then we want to take on, any repairs we want to make, there'll be a cost associated with that. We'll go through a public hearing, or not public hearing, but at least a public meeting process. Depending on the amounts, we could do a public hearing, but if they're smaller amounts, and then that'll be an annual assessment that the board will approve, which we've been doing consistently in November. We bring back any assessments, recommendations based on the work that's been done, either by us in our county, or it could be done on a joint county, and now they're sending us a bill. And then we're then assessing that back to the property owners. So this was a one-off event where we're updating all of the properties that are benefiting from the ditch. We probably won't do this again for another maybe 15, 20, 25 years, this particular redetermination of benefits. But we will do ongoing maintenance and repairs as needed, and then we'll be assessing those costs back to the property owners.
So I'd like all the board members to look into the camera wherever it is, and make sure that Krista writes this down to our future county boards, all the hard work that we did. It was very hard. Thank you, Dave. But I was thinking 25 years from now, they might look at it again, but this is it. It's kind of a nice feeling, I would say. So
Yes.
thank you. They're not going to say thank you, so I'm going to say thank you to this board for all their hard work on this important issue. So did I get a second or first
Yes,
motion in a second?
yes, you did.
Ditch 6, okay. So any other questions? Because I do have a motion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you on behalf of future county boards. Can I do that? I'm not even sure I can do that. All right, item 4.2, consider adoption of special assessment for redetermination of benefits for county ditch number 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same process, just different ditch and different amounts. The County Ditch 9, the redetermination of benefits was approved after a public hearing on February 18th. And that, the viewers did calculate buffer strip payments, which is one rod on either side. One rod is like 16 feet, is that? 16 and a half feet. I'm trying to remember that. 16 and a half feet on either side of the ditch. The property owner has to keep that in grass. It can't be used for farming. And because of that, there is a requirement when a redetermination of benefits is done that those buffer strip payments be made. We did do the research, and there was a couple of properties that had the buffer strips payments made back in the 80s. County Ditch 9 has not had their buffer strip payments made. So that was at $67,600 will be payments that'll be made to those ditch owners that have the property along the side of the ditch. And then that along with the redetermination of benefit costs of $23,629, those amounts together add up to $91,229. That's the recommendation for a special assessment for County Ditch 9. And that one also recommending that any special assessments over $250 get spread over 5 years at interest rate of 4%. And the property owners will be notified by a letter that they have the option to prepay their assessment by the end of the year. And then no assessment will be made on their property.
Okay, much like the first one. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lynch?
Dave, what is a buffer strip?
It's the 16.5 feet on either side of the ditch, and the property owners are not able to do anything with that. They have to keep it grass, or they can't farm it. So
They can't row crop it. They actually have grass and then they want to hay it. And the reason they want to do that, I just wanted to get this on the record, that they do it for,
Should have asked you the question.
it's very similar to what Linden likes to do on the side of the road, keeps the trees out of it. So it's just, and we encourage everyone to keep it in grass and then actually bale it, and it keeps it in production. But in a rain event, if you get a couple of, it keeps the dirt out of the ditch. So I just wanted to have that for the record.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
I think that was the Governor Dayton era, wasn't it? It's recent, fairly recent for that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. I've already been wrong or not totally
And-
accurate on one answer.
And this may be different from the railroad buffers that farmers never adhere to.
Correct.
And it's amazing what you can grow on a railroad tie filled with creosote.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Ditch Board. Mike Wanis, I'm your ditch inspector, also the SWCD manager. So the Governor Dayton buffer strip was approved in 2015, and that was a state mandate that all public ditches have that 16.5-foot buffer. All public waters have minimum 30, average 50-foot buffer strip of perennial vegetation. However, it's been in ditch law, so statute 103E, ever since the 1970s, that anytime viewers are appointed to a ditch system, the ditch system has to compensate those landowners for that 1 rod, 16.5-foot of grass buffer strip. So we have two different buffer laws in place, one through the ditch law, one through Governor Dayton's buffer law. What Dave has mentioned is County Ditch 9 has never been paid for those buffer strips. So now that the viewers were appointed as this redetermination of benefits process, they have to compensate those landowners for that 16.5 feet of buffer strip.
Who does?
The ditch authority has to pay for it through the ditch funds for that particular ditch system.
The other ditch, benefiting ditch property owners are going to pay the ones that have.
Okay. Not controversial at all.
Well, I don't know if I'd say that. Yeah, there's two separate buffer laws, essentially.
Well, thank God. Okay, thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the recommendation of the 91,229 special assessment
For ditch 9.
for ditch number 9.
All right, Commissioner Fahey has made a motion.
I would second.
Commissioner Lynch has seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. All right, item 4.3, consider adoption of a special assessment for redetermination of benefits for County Ditch number 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So County Ditch number 10, They approved the recommended viewers report for the redetermination of benefits after a public hearing on February 18th as well. I've determined that the buffer strip payments have previously been paid for the redetermination of benefits as part of the redetermination benefits back in 1982. The total cost for the redetermination of benefits for CD10 was $19,177. Recommending an assessment of that 19,177, not the 18,000 that's in your packets. So the recommendation is a 19,177 special assessment with any individual assessments over $250 spread over a 5-year period at an interest rate of 4%. I'm not sure what happened on this particular RVA. And that, as we mentioned before, the property owners will be getting a letter notifying them of their ditch assessment and giving them the opportunity to prepay that before the end of the year.
Okay, I'm going to read this action because it was corrected. Consider adoption of a recommended $19,177 special assessment with any individual assessment over $250 spread over a 5-year period with an interest rate of 4%. That would be a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Fahey and a second by Commissioner Lynch for the previously stated action. Any discussion on this one?
Only that, if I could, Mr. Chair, that we're going through the same thing and it's a cookie cutter, but if you're a farmer and these ditches are very important to you, they take away a lot of the water, and without these ditches, there'd be many acres that wouldn't be farmable. So just like to have that on the record.
Thank you for adding that.
Another debatable topic for another day, I would say. I like farmland. Okay, we got a motion and a second. No other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Commissioner Lynch.
I'd like to make the motion to adjourn as the County Ditch Authority and reconvene as the county board.
Commissioner Lynch has moved to adjourn as County Ditch Authority and reconvene as a county board. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Anderson. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Commissioner. Mr. Hemsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. On page 4, referring to your schedule, the strategic planning sessions, we have them all finally locked in, so thank you to Krista, including, I believe, did you get everybody in the one-on-one meetings on April 3rd? So those are all set up, ready to go. We have a few more logistical items to go through, otherwise we're on our way with that process. And then on your agenda, as Board Chair Workman already mentioned, you have a work session today, and up to you and the other board members, Mr. Chair. I know it's going to take probably an hour to get through the whole presentation. We could either move it, if we did move it, would want to move it into April because of staffing schedules.
Well, I'll leave it up to the board. I would need to leave probably in about 30 minutes. So.
Given Chair Workman's understanding in this area, I would be reluctant to continue this conversation without him present.
I would leave it up to the chair's discretion to move it wherever you would like, sir.
Okay, I'll leave it up to staff to move it to a future. Thank you for coming anyway.
Likely be April. What were we talking about, Nick? April?
Probably April 8th.
April 8th, okay. We'll shoot for that, depending on how other issues pop up.
I did want to thank the gentleman in the back for being ready and prepared to have this conversation. Sorry for the curveball. Life happens, or death happens in this situation. So, but I think you understand Chair Workman's expertise in this area, and so thanks for your flexibility.
I'm doing a pretty good bluff job, huh? All right.
You are.
I will accept a motion to adjourn in a second.
I'd move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
I think
Second.
Uterman seconded. I got a motion by Lynch and a second by Anderson to adjourn our regular session. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Our meeting is adjourned.